Welcome to Dateline Schools, a presentation of the St. Clair County Regional Educational Service Agency, with your host, Chris Troy.
There are over 280,000 high school athletes in the state of Michigan who take to the quarter field each year, and the one thing that they all have in common is that they are represented by their school's athletic director. What is it like to be an athletic director for local schools is our topic all this week on Dateline Schools. My special guest from Marysville High School is Athletic Director Phil Gartland. Well, first of all, Phil, thanks a lot for being here today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for contacting me.
Hey, Phil, how long have you been the Athletic Director here at Marysville?
Here at Marysville, this is my third year.
And how many sports does Marysville have?
Right now, we offer 24 different sports for the students, and that's including, boys and girls.
And I'm guessing that those are spread out evenly throughout the year?
Yes, there's 3 seasons, and they're pretty evenly spread out. There's multiple options for boys and girls throughout each season.
Talk to me about the league that Marysville is in. I know before we started talking about this and doing this, I mentioned about the MAC Gold. Does Marysville just compete in the Gold, or do each team compete in different classes?
Well, MAC is the association that we are in, and in the MAC, there's a red, white, a blue league, and then a gold, silver, and bronze. And the way that the MAC does it is every 2 years are realignment years, where the ADs get together and they kind of vote to determine in which league a school will be in. Now, a school can be in different leagues for different sports at the same time. And the whole goal of that is to create, good competition. So it doesn't necessarily depend on how big your school is or just how good your record is. The MAC looks at all of that, and when they're forming their leagues, like I said, the whole spirit is to create the best competition. So you'll see programs, as, say, a volleyball program at Marysville High School that has done well traditionally and is doing well now. We are in the MAC Red, which is the the highest league with the best competition. And then throughout the years, things will get restructured. Of course, ADs, one thing that they can do is during the restructuring year, they can petition whether they want their teams to go up or down a league.
Phil, how many coaches are there in the Marysville School District?
In the whole district, if you're including middle school as well as high school, there is over 50. Of course, we have some coaches that coach multiple sports. But yeah, there's over 50. And then, of course, that there are a lot more volunteers that are with all of our sports. So, there's a ton of people in the community helping out with athletics, and I just think that's great.
How often do sports kind of cross over with each other, say maybe a fall and a winter, if the football team goes on, plays over Thanksgiving Day weekend? Have the basketball season already kind of gotten started, or how does that work with your athletes?
Mm-hmm. Well, as you know, there's 3 seasons, and that kind of all depends on how well the team is doing. Say in the fall season, like you gave the example of football, if you have a team doing well, that can go pretty long into throughout November. As you mentioned, there could be competitions over Thanksgiving weekend, and usually by that time, basketball has started, at least with tryouts. So there is definitely the potential every year between the fall, the winter, and the spring. There is a potential for some overlap if you have teams that are doing pretty well and continuing on into the postseason.
For someone out there listening who has always heard the word athletic director, but maybe not sure or understand exactly what your duties are, can you kind of give us a clue what you do?
Sure. Well, as the athletic director, I am, the direct line of communication for the coaches and to help them, get them what they need so that they can help and develop our players to be the best students, athletes that they can be. With the AD, I am the assistant principal here too. So there are lots of other duties assigned with that. But as far as the AD portion goes, with the changing of each season, I really try to make sure that the facilities are up to date. There's scheduling that I work with my secretary very closely on to get up to date for each season, and that's usually done quite a bit in advance, just so we have all the competitions that we want to have. Throughout the year, it's checking in with student athletes, ensuring that they have all of their proper documentation before the season begins. That involves a physical form turned in, that involves a concussion form turned in, as well as the signing of our athletic policy documents. And then throughout the season, my main goal is just to support the coaches as much as I can, as well as all the administrative stuff that needs to go on just to ensure that the competitions are run smoothly and that, the whole year of scheduling is run smoothly. A lot of my time is just speaking with coaches, seeing what they need, and trying to help them throughout the season.
Phil, you've got how many teams in your conference?
In the conference, well, the MAC has about 32 schools, and not every school has every single sport, but the majority of them have, the sports that we offer.
So 32 schools, 32 teams, everybody's playing everybody. Who comes up with that schedule? How does that work?
Yep, well, the MAC, they will provide the league schedule. So depending upon the sport, you will receive a schedule for the MAC League with all your league games. Now, each sport has a certain number of competitions that they're allowed throughout the season. So after we receive that MAC schedule, then we work with the coaches. The coaches can kind of go out. They can reach out to other teams who they think will provide good competition for their teams. And we'll try to fill in the rest of the schedule with that. Lots of times we might try to either look at a local rivalry to play for our different sports, or we might look at somebody that we could potentially be facing in the postseason. But once we receive our MAC League schedule, then kind of the next goal is to fill in the holes of the schedule with what's going to give our kids the most competition and preparation for the postseason.
Phil, where do your coaches come from? Are they teachers? Are they community members? How do you feel the helping the education with your students?
Sure. We do have a lot of coaches from the school that are our head coaches here, and also we have a lot of community members. Parents have helped out. It mostly has been either teachers or Marysville community members.
Phil, how do you work with your coaches to help them be successful? Do you help them with new gear purchases or?
Absolutely. There's, each team has an inventory of what they need. That's another thing that we keep track of here in the athletic department is, purchasing, whether it's jerseys, whether it's reusing equipment each year. We have to look at that, or if it's time that we need to purchase new equipment, like for safety, like for instance football helmets, they have a certain shelf life and they're tested to ensure that that piece of equipment is safe. So that's just something we have to keep track of, keep documented year over year. There's a whole laundry list and sheet of stuff that we want to look through to ensure that we have all the equipment that we need, all the jerseys that we need, and it's just basically a long list of inventory.
Phil, how much interaction do you have with other districts' athletic directors?
Sure. Well, every month the MAC, they have an athletic director meeting. So once a month, it's usually the first Wednesday of the month, we will all meet at one location to discuss, all kinds of, topics regarding sports, regarding creating the best competition, regarding anything that we can see to make our competitions run more smoothly. So I do once a week or once a month, get to meet with everybody in the MAC. And of course, there's constant communication through emails. A lot of the local teams that we do play more, I will have more conversations with those ADs. But I think just in general, the MAC, all the ADs do have a great amount of communication with each other, and it is a great organization to be a part of.
Phil, you always hear stories of students transferring into a school district just to compete in sports. Are there rules on how long a student needs to be enrolled before being able to compete?
Yes, there are definitely a lot of regulations with that, and that is all established by the Michigan High School Athletic Association. When a student transfers in, the set rule is that if they played a particular sport at their previous school, they would have to sit out one season of that sport before they start at our school, unless there's a set of 15 expectations for that rule that's set by the MHSAA. It could be that the family had a full and total move. So, all their belongings, total change of household. If they did that and they had the required documentation, they could start the sport right away. Another common rule that we see is maybe they changed from living with one family member to another. But there is a list of 15 expectations where a student can transfer schools and begin to play immediately. So, of course, when that happens, that's something that the athletic office would be required to look into and prove that one of those rule exceptions is deemed true, and that student could start right away.
Phil, over the last few years, the awareness of concussions have been brought forward on the playing fields, and concussion protocols have been developed. Can you explain a little bit about the concussion protocols, and have they changed the way the games have been played?
Sure. Well, that's all done in the spirit of safety, and I do think that that's great. And the MHSAA is doing a very great job of ensuring that these protocols are followed, as well as getting data and documentation for the various sports and the concussions that arise. So typically what happens if a student is suspected of a concussion, of course they are pulled from play at that time and asked to sit out for the remainder of that competition and any other future competitions until we can get some kind of verification from a medical examiner of if they did or did not have a concussion. And if they did have a concussion, it would be reported to our office. We would then report that to the MHSAA, and then that student would then have to be cleared by a medical professional in order to return to play. And as I mentioned a little bit ago, the MHSAA, they do all that for documentation, data collection to analyze ways to make the sport safer for the kids.
You mentioned documentation. Do you have sports where you have equipment that needs to be certified?
Yes, there is. Definitely our football helmets, they are on a cycle where every few years they are looked at, and football helmets do have a shelf life, so they will need to be totally replaced, at some time. That's a big one, is the football helmets. That's the main one, just because of the nature of the sport that we really try to keep everything as up to date, keep everything in good documentation as far as the helmets and the cycle that they are in, as far as the year that they were issued and the shelf life for them. So that's something that one piece of equipment in particular that we really keep track of, and for safety reasons.
Well, Phil, I appreciate your time and all that you and all the other athletic directors out there do to give our kids a great experience. For Dateline Schools, I'm Chris Troy. Dateline Schools is a presentation of St. Clair County RESA.